So I really like to think of mindfulness as a catalyst for healing. And the word healing, or I should say another word for healing, is wholeness, to be in full integrity. So the Pali word sati, which was the original term used to refer to the practice of mindfulness, was translated in English into the word that we have today, mindfulness, some time ago by a British scholar. However, Buddha himself defined the word sati as the act of remembering who you are. But what are we remembering when we practice mindfulness? Well, I like to say that mindfulness is the practice of remembering our purpose, remembering the people that or the person that we've always wanted to be, remembering our responsibility to ourselves and others in a context of the resources and capabilities that we brought with us, that we were given at birth in this life. So in short, we are remembering our wholeness, which is the fundamental foundation of what health is. To be in the natural organic balance and harmony with not only our own nature, but the nature around us. And interestingly enough, the word heal, which I just mentioned, has often been taken to mean that in order for us to be whole or healthy, we cannot be in fragmented or separated or warring parts. So in this way, mindfulness is actually a catalyst for healing or integrating our awareness. That's where I get the title of what I do as an integrative awareness coach, because it allows us the space to remember the entirety of who we are, the entirety of our consciousness. So we no longer have to exclude or exile those parts of us that we may have deemed unworthy or wanting or unacceptable. And we all have these parts that we learned through our cultural conditioning that weren't okay, that weren't acceptable. But for some, this is still a radical idea, because a lot of these aspects of our consciousness that we have repressed remain unconscious. So our conscious everyday mind isn't even aware that they're there, although they are affecting our choices, our relationships, our livelihood, and every area of our life. So how can we learn to accept those awful parts, those unsavory parts of us that can sometimes bring up negative emotions associated with shame and guilt and fear or even humiliation? Well, mindfulness is a practice that can help us begin to do that. Of course, it's not the only practice, but it is a very powerful path in allowing us to cultivate the type of peace that only self-acceptance can bring. So when we take the time to practice mindfulness, we're actually sending a message to our bodies, to our consciousness, to the world, that we are inviting all the parts of ourselves to come home. And when we do this, when we remember our wholeness, we begin to see that the violence on a subtle level that we perpetrate on ourselves as a part of a normalized, conditioned aspect of our culture, we begin to see the roots of it internally. And as we do, we begin to notice how we constantly demand that life be different, that we be different, that others be different. And this is a subtle form of rejection, a subtle form of violence through thought, through deed, through our words, and then it becomes acted out into the world. So by constantly demanding that our lives be different than how they are right now in this moment is a subtle yet divisive type of self-violence. Because it fragments, it dismembers us from ourselves and in turn our communities in which we live. But the Buddhist word for meeting life with balance is equanimity. Neither clinging or resisting our experiences. Mindfulness allows us the opportunity to practice an awareness of how we relate to ourselves, and in doing so, we can develop the strength of mind to begin to develop the most important tool. And this equanimity, or this balance, which allows life to unfold without excessive aversion, pushing away, or excessive clinging, we can gain a clearer perspective and approach to our lives, to ourselves, and then to the world. And as a natural consequence, this transforms the way that we relate to others. I also like to think of mindfulness as a therapeutic space that we create for ourselves. A lot of people go to see doctors or therapists, even psychologists, if they're suffering emotionally and mentally, if they've been through a traumatic event or some depression or difficulty. Mindfulness is a self-created therapeutic space. So, not that we shouldn't see doctors or therapists or counselors, but perhaps this is a practice that we can cultivate in partnership with outside therapeutic spaces. And in our high-tech world today, we hardly make time to be present for others, let alone ourselves. So we often give more attention to our technological devices than we do to ourselves and to others. And this is the idea of what we pay our attention to. And are we actually investing or getting a return on our investment, I should say. We don't necessarily need one more thing to do on our to-do list. And in fact, as you begin to practice or strengthen your mindfulness practice, you might really notice that the to-do list is actually an afterthought. The to-do list is a way of chasing a condition of being, of satisfaction, of fulfillment, a sense of contentment. And we've learned to focus our energy outside in order to achieve these states of being. Of course, they're fleeting until we get our next to-do list. So as you begin or continue or deepen your mindfulness practice, you are actually supporting yourself and cultivating a quality of being that's not related to any outside conditions, including your to-do list. And you can begin to use it as a tool for self-care. And it's more about a way of being or a place within ourselves to live from that we may have covered over or forgotten about in the busyness of our everyday life, in the conditioning that has us constantly focus outside in order for us to determine our state of being internally. So this therapeutic space invites us to increasingly allow for the full depth of our own dynamic expression, and to just be fully in life without our mind telling us or giving us conditions about whether we can enjoy it or not.